was small, I started dancing ballet at 3, and I danced for 15 years. It was my life. That's all I wanted to do, was just dance ballet. When I got into high school, I was really struggling with who I was. I got a boyfriend. I ended up getting pregnant by him at 18. He left when I was 6 months pregnant. On my own, I moved to Las Vegas. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any support. I was gonna make it no matter what it took. I was trying to get a job. It was really hard. I didn't have anyone to watch my son. I was going like to interview, and I decided to get a job working at a strip club, being completely naive of that entire lifestyle, but I felt like this is what I have to do just temporarily until I can get another job. And I was making a lot of money. I was taking care of me and my son. A couple months into it, I met a man who I thought was the answer to all my dreams. Like, he's like, stop working at the club, I'll take care of you and your son. You're amazing, this whole thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I made it. Like, I did it. That classic story of like, it's gonna be amazing now. About 2 months into it, he sits me down in my kitchen. He shows me that he has my phone, my birth certificate, my social security card, all my son's stuff. He has addresses to my parents' house, my family's house. He knows all about my brother. He knows everything about my family. He tells me that he's actually a pimp and that he has complete control over everything now. This is what I'm gonna be doing. I have to work for him. I'm gonna work in the casinos. That his other girls are gonna take me out and show me how it works. I was completely overwhelmed. I had no idea. I mean, it was like getting totally blindsided by like, what are you talking about? And after a while, I ran away from him so many times, and he would just find me and my son and kidnap me and bring me back. And I just threw my hands in, like, this is my life, and it was devastating because all I wanted to do was take care of my son. Like, from the beginning, that's all I wanted, was to provide for him and take care of him. And so it was devastating as a mom, like, that this happened. In the moment, the fear was real. So another thing that his family was involved in for a long time was identity theft and fraud and stolen credit cards, all that kind of crime. And they decided to start doing that again, and it was the same kind of thing, like, this is what we're doing, you're going in these stores. It was the same threats, like, I had no choice again. So we were in St. Louis, and we went around all day going to the different stores. We went back to the hotel room at night. I remember perfectly, like it was yesterday. It was pouring rain. I forgot something in the car. So I ran out to the car, and for the first time in this whole journey, I thought about God. And I remember there was like this flower bed right outside the hotel, and like as I jumped over the flower bed, like this real quick thought, I just said in my head, like, God, get me away from him for a year. Like, in my mind, it was like, if I could just get away from him for a year, I could get my life together. I came back in. What I didn't know is there was an undercover police officer in the parking lot watching someone else. She thought that I looked suspicious for whatever reason, arrested us in the morning. 24 hours later, I thought I was going to be getting out. And the feds came and picked us up, took us to the federal building, and indicted us on 11 felonies. I saw my attorney that day right after they read you your indictment, and he said with my charges, I was looking at 14 to 24 years in prison. So I went back to my cell that night. We had single man cells. I was in there by myself, and I couldn't even think. All I could think about was that my son was gonna be like driving to pick me up to get me out of prison. When I'm released, he's gonna be like 25 years old. And I remembered from the movies laying there that the Catholics confess their sins for forgiveness and felt like I had nothing to lose. So I got on my knees and I just started confessing all my sins, everything I could ever think of that I did wrong from when I was like a small child. But once I got, like when I was older and all the bad stuff that I had done, I would hesitate, and it was a long time. It was hours I was there, and I was just crying and weeping and just saying, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to ever happen. And when I was done, it was like there was no noise. Like all of the noise left, but it wasn't silent. There was sound, but it wasn't music. And Jesus walked into my cell, and he sat down on my bed, and he didn't say anything. He just put his hand on my back, and the only way that I can find any kind of words to describe anything is that I went from one kingdom to another in a moment. Like, in a moment, everything changed. There was so much peace. I just remember waking up in the morning and all I could think about was God. And I went down, I got a Bible. One of the girls told me to start reading in the New Testament. I'm like, all right, so I start in the New Testament, I start reading, I'm like, I'm hooked though. Like, I cannot stop reading, and I start reading through Matthew, and I get to Mark, and I'm reading, and it's like the same thing, so I'm a little like, what's going on? And I read through Mark, and I get to Luke, and it's the same story again. I'm like, what's going on? So I thought that the prison got misprinted Bibles, so I put the Bible back, thinking that it was misprinted. And I got another one that said the words of Jesus are in red, so I thought that one would be good. But then I noticed that the book is like this big, and the red letters, the section is like this big, and I thought, well, that's strange. Everybody talks about Jesus. He didn't have a whole lot to say. And so I just decided to start on page 1, and I was completely hooked. I just read everything I read, I believed. So when it was like, you're wonderfully, beautifully made, I didn't ever question that. It was like, oh, sweet, I'm totally beautiful to God. I never questioned anything. I never needed like an explanation. It was never like, yeah, but what about this? It was like, this is what it says, and this is it. So the DA offered me 24 months if I took a plea agreement. So I got out of prison. 4 days later, I started working at my grandparents' restaurant. My husband, my now husband, was the chef at the restaurant. And so I met him 4 days after I got out. It was immediate connection right away. And so we started dating. We were married 6 months later. I was, 2 months after that, I was pregnant with our first daughter. He got a job offer from a friend in Reading. We'd never been here before. We came 2 days later, looked at Reading. He took the job. We moved 2 weeks later with no plan. About a year after we got here, I started hearing a lot about trafficking, and I was like, nope. Like every time I turned around, it was like trafficking, and I was like, no, I'm good. And one day I was in worship, totally just minding my own business, just loving Jesus, the whole thing. And it was like that still small voice that was so loud though. And it was like Jesus like tapped on my shoulder and whispered in my ear, and he said, they don't think anyone is coming for them. The yes in my spirit was louder than anything that I could even yell. I was just like, I'm coming back for them, whatever. Like let them know, here I come. I was all in at that point. And about a week after that encounter in worship, I meet a lady at the grocery store in the produce section, and we connect. We go to coffee the next week. I tell her my story. She happens to do Bible study at a rescue home for girls, underage girls coming out of trafficking here in Northern California. So she takes me up there. I start going up there, building relationships with the girls. And so I go up few times a week. I have been for over a year now, and my kids come, my husband comes, we hang out, we do barbecues, I love them right where they're at. And I talk about Jesus a lot, but I also just love them and believe that love never fails, and it's completely transforming their lives. Looking at my own life, the biggest miracle that God has done for me is giving me a family. Like, we mow the lawn and have family game night and this whole thing. And just as important as it is for me to eradicate trafficking, it's more important to me to make sure that my family, my children grow up in the perfect family that God created. That my children are always equipped with what they need to live a full life, to live their dreams, to just grow up with a relationship with God. And if that's all I do, that's enough. If that's all I do in my life, that is success for me.